I'm Marcus Smith, and this is Constant Wonder. Thanks for joining us in an ongoing quest for the awe and the wonder that await each of us every day and all around. Awe can be found in all creation, human or wild, vast or small, in spiritual encounters that move us beyond words. Graceful movement, a sleek bodily form, high intelligence, elegant markings head to tail. With all these features, the Peregrine Falcon has unmistakable charisma, a mesmerizing power over our imagination. This bird's superpower, of course, is its sheer speed. The Peregrine Falcon is flat out and by far the fastest creature on Earth, diving at speeds of over 200 miles per hour. The second fastest animal, also a bird, called the white-throated needletail, tops out at a pedestrian 106 miles per hour. In this episode of Constant Wonder, we'll marvel at this majestic creature as we visit with three people who have gone to dizzying heights and great lengths to both get to know the peregrines and protect them. First, we'll travel to the misty cliffs and a few church towers of Scotland, where for over 40 years, a risk-taking volunteer has climbed high to count peregrine falcons, band their chicks, and even bag a few poachers. Later in the episode, we'll lower our latitude but hold our altitude by heading far west to California to learn about a peregrine matriarch named Annie, a mama whose parenting efforts have met with unusual success. This Annie has gained worldwide fame from her nest high in a bell tower on the campus of the University of California Berkeley. Falconry has always been a sport of kings, but it is now also a sport of criminals. A lucrative black market has emerged that supplies racing birds to wealthy clients primarily in the Middle East, and in southern Scotland, with its peregrine falcons that are especially prized by traffickers, one friendly but feisty man stands between these wild birds of prey and the lust of unscrupulous hobbyists.
So I've been studying peregrine falcons for the best part of 38 years. I monitor the whole population here, and most of my birds have microchips on them, so I can find out where they're nesting.
George Smith and I share the same surname, the same mother tongue, but we have different jobs and accents.
Yeah, so I have a very strong feeling that these are my peregrines. I look after them. I've checked them for years. I know most of their mothers and fathers and daughters and sons, so they are very close to my heart. There are losses naturally every year, which I can cope with, but to have additional losses due to people stealing them just makes me very angry.
There's a swath of southeastern Scotland that George refers to as his patch. It runs from Edinburgh to the English border, and it's one of 11 regions in the Scottish Raptor Study Group. In 2021, George gave public notice to local peregrine chicknappers. More on that coming up. It's a great true crime story. For now, let's note that for nearly 40 years, George, with the indulgence of his wife and children, has volunteered nearly all of his free time caring for the wild peregrines of this part of Scotland, climbing, counting, weighing them, collecting DNA, microchipping, banding them, whatever it takes.
Currently, I'm the only person in Britain who traps peregrines. I have a unique license to trap adult peregrines. I learned trapping quite late on, and the first bird I trapped by myself was a huge beast of a bird. She's probably the heaviest peregrine that's ever been recorded in Britain. She was an English-reared peregrine, and she was nesting in my patch. And a great day that was. That was my first trapping session with peregrines.
How does one go about trapping the fastest animal on the planet? Well, to begin with, you have to get to the nest. George describes himself as a reluctant climber. He's gotten pretty good at it, but it's a means to an end.
I was never a climber by choice. I climb because I have to get to the nests. It's a necessity. I'm studying peregrines. Peregrines nest on cliff faces. I have to get to those cliff faces to trap adults, to put microchips on, to put rings on, to collect DNA samples. So it's a necessity to have climbing skills. So I learned climbing over the years, initially without any training, and then got training, got certified, and much safer now than I used to be. I have fallen once. I don't want to do it again. I was climbing a riverside cliff, and my safety equipment failed on me, and I fell 30 metres. Fortunately, my rope held me 2 metres from the bottom. I did break 3 ribs, but other than that, I was fine.
If you can get to the nest, trapping a peregrine requires a bit of benign deception, including a switcheroo. Apparently, what you have to do is exchange the fragile real falcon eggs for some fakes.
So I go to a nest, I take the real eggs out for safety, put plastic eggs in place so the real eggs don't get broken, put the real eggs safely in a box, a warm box nearby, put a special trap on the nest.
The device is, of course, a live animal trap made from layers of concentric wire rings, some of the wire thin enough to look a bit like fishing line.
Either one of the parents will come back to sit on the eggs and is caught in the trap and then lifted out and processed, so weighed, measured, DNA sampled, ringed, microchipped, and then released, and the real eggs put back in the nest. And over the years, there has never been an issue with these peregrines at all. They all go back to their eggs and are very happy and rear chicks, so they're not really disturbed by whatever I do.
How many peregrines have you handled?
Let's start at the big number. So I've done 7,000 microchips, but that's a lot of those are on young birds. And I have handled 250 adults, 300 adults, possibly maybe 300 adults now. My microchipping is not done by injecting microchips. They're all microchips attached to another metal ring. So they have a standard government ring on one leg and a ring with a microchip in it on the other leg. It's not done by any medical insertions of microchips into the body.
If I can interrupt just for a moment, you've mentioned adults. I'm wondering how old they can get.
I actually handled the oldest peregrine ever recorded, who was 23. 23 is exceptional. So he was ringed in England. I trapped him up here and fitted him with a microchip and followed him for 8 or 9 years up here with a microchip on. And he did very well. He reared lots of chicks in his lifetime. I think he had at least 3 different partners in his lifetime. I have tabs on at least 4 of his chicks over the years. He's done good for the whole population. He has a lot of DNA across my patch.
Another memorable moment for George Smith came during a close encounter he had with a female peregrine together with her very lively young, still in their eggs, unhatched.
I approached a nest whilst hiding behind a little bush when I could see the nest through the bush, and the female was calling to her chicks who were still within the egg. So the eggs were cheeping and she was cheeping back to them, and I was only 4 meters from the nest, and that was a stunning day. They are all unique individuals. They're like people. They all behave differently. They react differently. I have some peregrines that actually, I believe, know who I am and recognise me from year to year. And they will behave differently towards me than towards someone else going near the nest site. And they are much more confident and stable when I'm approaching a nest site. If someone else different goes there, they behave totally differently. So I strongly believe that they recognise who I am and that I'm not an issue.
Unless you or I ever get a chance to perform the same functions George does while trapping, tagging, inspecting nests, we're highly unlikely ever to have close, intimate personal contact with these incredible birds, which, however, does not mean that their awe and majesty are inaccessible to people like us. We would just need to know where peregrines fly, then take the time to wait and watch.
I have seen some fairly fantastic hunting sessions where they are chasing prey at great speed across the sky, and sometimes they don't catch anything, but the hunt is fantastic. They are superb flyers and they are very, very fast. You have 2 methods of hunting. Stooping is the fastest, so they'll probably hit 200 miles an hour on a stoop, so that's a straight dive. And those are exceptionally fast flights and don't last very long, but they are spectacular. And when they strike their prey, they're hitting it pretty hard, and it tends not to survive very well from that.
The fastest ever recorded stooping dive was performed by a domestically raised falcon named Frightful, who hit an astounding 242 miles per hour while chasing a lead-weighted lure dropped from a Cessna aircraft at 15,000 feet. George says a falcon, while careening at terrific speed in a stoop, will typically strike the bird with its talons clenched like fists, knocking the bird out of the air and often killing it instantly. Along with George's description of stooping as one of their two methods of hunting, we could benefit from a quick reminder that these birds are raptors, which means that they are hypercarnivorous. That, of course, means they eat a whole lot of meat. Their diet comes from other vertebrates, shorebirds, ducks, grebes, gulls, pigeons and songbirds, bats even. Sometimes they will steal meat from other raptors for a tasty side dish of fish or the occasional rodent. They've been known to eat reptiles and even insects. But back to their aerial acrobatics.
The other option is they have a straight, fast flight following something. So they are racing behind it as fast as they can go to catch the prey. So they approach it from behind very fast. Doing a straight flight, they will flip under it and clutch it from below.
In addition to their incredible speed, George says peregrine falcons are clever and patient, hovering high in the sky, waiting for prey to cross underneath them.
I have seen peregrines waiting in a valley, waiting for prey to fly past. They're expecting them to fly past. So they just get some height and wait. They seem to know when things are coming or can see them far away and wait for them coming up. So they are very shrewd in how they hunt. I saw a peregrine kill another falcon, a kestrel, by flying through the mist. A foggy day, I was standing on a sea cliff and the mist was coming in from the sea and the kestrel was hovering just 20 metres in front of me. I couldn't see very far at all, but just heard this thing coming out of the sky, and the peregrine came out of the fog and hit this kestrel in midair. The kestrel never saw anything coming and it suffered a very quick end, quite close to me.
For some people, I suppose, once you've watched a wild falcon dive at such speed, owning such a bird might have its allure. And for some reason, wild Scottish falcons are especially prized in the minds of some wealthy and unscrupulous people in various parts of the world.
There's not much science behind this, but there is a feeling that wild peregrines are better and faster and stronger. And for some reason, they think it's Scottish ones that are bigger and faster and stronger. I'm not sure where that notion comes from, because my peregrines are not all Scottish. So the DNA from my peregrines is Europe-wide. Some of my peregrines are Irish, and some are Welsh, and some are English, and some are Dutch. So they're not all from this area. They move all over the place. But there still is a feeling in the falconry community that wild Scottish peregrines are the best, and they command a higher price. So there is a market for Scottish peregrines in particular to be taken generally to the Middle East for falcon racing.
If anyone in Scotland has earned the right to use the phrase "my peregrines" in reference to Scotland's wild falcons, well, that would be George Smith. Some poachers of recent years have miscalculated the odds of successfully outfoxing his surveillance. When a healthy pair of breeding falcons fails to raise chicks again and again, despite a good nest with plenty of food, George says that is not chance. There's a strong likelihood that a chick napper is at work.
Over the years, you get a feeling for how production is going and how the population is just doing generally. And from 2016 to 2021, there were a group of nests that were just constantly failing with no real reason. So once we'd pinpointed the nests that were potentially being targeted, we had a joint meeting with the police on several nest sites. And at least two of those nest sites, we found indications that someone had been there before we were there. It was only identified later when they traced some mobile phone signals and identified the fact that they had been there just in front of us. The police had a suspicion who the perpetrators of these crimes were. And when the first set of chicks disappeared that we were monitoring very closely, the police carried a raid on their house and discovered 7 chicks and 2 eggs held within the house. And those were collected on the day and taken into care.
The police arrested a father and son for illegal trafficking and confiscated the contraband. George then was to receive the 7 kidnapped chicks and 2 live eggs. Time was of the essence, and he was very anxious to get the chicks back into the nests to be raised by their parents. But first there had to be court approval, and this boggles my mind, but the affair actually had turned into something like a child custody fight, with the accused traffickers retaining their own legal counsel, not just to get out of hot water themselves, but to lay claim to rightful ownership of the birds.
So we tried to get them back in the wild as soon as possible, but the defence lawyer suggested that these were captive-bred peregrines and would die if they were put back in the wild.
The defense was grasping at straws. George had hard proof from having monitored the peregrine nests with his patience and dedication. DNA tests showed that every one of the chicks was a wild bird, but the legal proceedings had burned up a lot of time.
A delay of about a week while they decided that possibly it might be in their best interest to let us put those chicks into the wild.
The big snag in rewilding them was that even with DNA, it was impossible to know specifically which chicks had been taken from which nests. So the attempt to undo the act of poaching seemed far from any guarantee of success. George visited numerous sites in South Scotland to place all of the stolen birds and eggs back into foster nests. It came as a great relief that the foster parents were unperturbed by the presence of these newcomers.
All those nests we put cameras on whilst the chicks were growing up, and we know certainly that all those chicks grew up sensibly and healthily and all fledged. I know the location of at least 4 of them just now, and they're all doing very well in the wild. And I'm pleased to say that one of those chicks is currently breeding this year, and hopefully others will start breeding as well in this area.
Just as these falcons, on the whole, seem to be able to handle very well that whole intrusive business of trapping and tagging, they also seem unfazed when an extra foster chick suddenly shows up in their nest.
People get really concerned about peregrines or birds in general being handled and touched by humans and smells. Peregrines just don't care. They want to have chicks. They want to feed their chicks and rear their chicks. They have no notion that I'm causing an issue. They just want to get back to their chicks. They can't count very well, so there may be 3 chicks in the nest when they leave, and they come back and there are 4. They will just continue to feed those 4 chicks with no worries whatsoever. They are quite robust and just don't really care how many there are, as long as they are producing young every year.
The chick napping incident he's talking about took place in 2021. And it represents more than just a successful conclusion to a single case, George says, because data he has collected over the years has been playing an ongoing pivotal role in shutting down this kind of illegal trafficking generally.
From that case, there are 200 other lines of inquiry ongoing. So people they sold peregrines to, contacts they found in his phone. The police have a large caseload currently running using the DNA samples we have. They've traced birds that came from my area to other sites in England. They've been sold to other people and are now known. Their location is now known and their origin is now known. There will be more cases following on from this one. It burst it wide open.
George's massive database of wild peregrine DNA from the region has thwarted the old gambit tried by these poachers of ever claiming that a bird was domestically bred.
Currently, the DNA sampling is proving very useful. We have a program across the country now for the whole of UK, collecting DNA from all these peregrines. We have so much data on the DNA, it's going to be hard to keep wild peregrines in captivity without being found.
George's data for his patch of Scotland, as he calls it, goes back continuously now to 1962. Keeping these records current is a labor of love. He's got a passion, a unique obsession that never lets up.
So I drive every year on 8,000 miles. So that's going around all the nest sites. And beyond that, I walk about 300 miles every year. It's fairly intense, but it's quite a short duration. It's sort of March to July is the window. There are traditional nest sites that are used year on year. There's a nest site that I go to that produced peregrines, which were used for falconry by King James IV of Scotland. So they are hundreds of years old, some of these nest sites. So I have to check 160 nest sites. Of those 160, there may only be 60 used per year because some are alternate nest sites, they're not commonly used. But I have to check them all anyway in the first place. But I'm going back to approximately 60, a minimum of 4 occasions, sometimes more than that. See if it's an adult female, adult male, juvenile female, juvenile male. Are they nesting? Have they got eggs? How many eggs do they have? How many eggs hatch? How many chicks survive? How many chicks fledge? It's a whole pile of data on peregrines. It's a fairly big study. The best nest sites are always occupied, and there's always a fight for those nest sites. They are very sought after. They are large cliffs, they are safe, they are in the right direction for protection from the weather, they have an overhang, they're dry. I have seen many squabbles over the years. The best sites always have a fight. There's always something happening, and there have been a few deaths. But it's always the male who holds the territory, not the female. It's his place, and he invites females in, but he will stay there. The hills are not a great place in the winter. He should be on the coast hunting other kinds of birds, but he keeps coming back just to make sure no one's stolen it, make sure there's no infiltrators or other peregrines who shouldn't be there. So he will look after it all winter.
And if that attentive male peregrine, while making a nesting check midwinter, should happen to come across a human also performing that same function, well, that would be George Smith again.
Peregrines don't build much of a nest. They just have a scrape in the ground on a cliff ledge. Sometimes these ledges fall in, there's rock falls, there's water cascading down, and it makes it unsuitable. So over winter, I go out and rebuild nest sites that have fallen down because of rock falls or bad weather. So I will go in over winter with a pick and a hammer and a shovel and dig these things out again and make a flat ledge for them to nest on. Sometimes I've even built roofs over them to keep the water off.
And you never get paid for this work?
Yes, indeed. I am a volunteer. I have a real job. This is not a job. This is a hobby. From mid-March to end of July, every spare minute of a weekend or an evening is spent out checking. So my wife and family are fantastically useful to me, and that they support me and encourage me to do what I do.
What would happen if you got sick or maybe indisposed with an injury, had to retire?
I need someone who is as stupid as me to go out and do this. It's hard to find someone who will do monitoring, climbing, ringing, trapping, DNA sampling. Climbing is probably the hardest, but not everyone wants to climb. So I would find some climber who would help me, that'd be easier. And it worries me that when I can't do it anymore, I can't find anyone who's going to do the same as I do. And I'm not sure how to fix that.
Increasingly, peregrines are moving into cities. Urban falcons are more common in southern England, George says, but he now has 2 pairs right in the city of Edinburgh. Still, the urbanity doesn't ease the challenge of getting to the nest. Tall buildings and sheer cliffs have much in common.
Some of those buildings are quite scary to climb. Some could be easy. So some churches with big towers have staircases up inside. You can actually climb up inside the church tower. But other church towers, they're actually nesting on the spire of the tower. It's a very steep climb or rope job up a pointy piece of building which has no handholds. So almost all buildings, unless they have internal staircases, are pretty horrific to climb. The one this year is on a 100-metre chimney, which is just straight up and down.
You're no doubt wondering, as I have been wondering too, how long can he keep doing this?
I'll be 65 next month. I will never stop climbing. I have a pact with my friend, and we both said we will keep this study going until our legs don't work anymore. I never get tired of it.
5,000 miles from Edinburgh and 100 meters up in another tower in Berkeley, California, an urban peregrine named Annie, a prolific matriarch, rules her roost. Years ago, this Annie set up housekeeping in the bell tower on the UC Berkeley campus. And in this case, contrary to George's experience in Scotland, it's been the female who has held on to the prime territory. In just a few moments, we'll be visiting with a married couple of biologists who discovered Annie. We'll hear about climbing a winding, narrow staircase up to her nest, and how Annie with her brood became a YouTube sensation. Annie's story will also offer us some fascinating additional insight into the way peregrine falcons do their parenting. I'm Marcus Smith, and this is Constant Wonder. Embark on a whimsical journey with The Appleseed and host Sam Payne. It's one of many shows from the BYU Radio family of podcasts. Wrap yourself in captivating stories, expertly woven by talented storytellers. You'll hear live studio audiences taking immense delight in a broad tapestry of tales, some humorous, others poignantly reflective. The Appleseed is always a family-friendly experience. It sparks imagination creative enough to make fiction feel like fact and bring real-life events back to life. The Appleseed. Listen wherever you get your podcasts. We now return to Constant Wonder. In 2016, a bird lover and professional biologist named Lynn Schofield was conducting research at the University of California Berkeley when one day she heard some new residents atop the tallest building on campus, a 307-foot bell tower called the Campanile.
I heard a falcon flying over, which are a pretty loud bird, and so the sound is described by people in the bird world as the keck call, so that pretty well describes it as a repeated keck, 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 keck. And so that is a little bit of a territorial vocalization. The bird wasn't close, but it's just such a loud sound that you can hear it from an enormous distance away. And so I closed up my computer, shoved it in my bag, and went immediately out to go see where the bird was. I watched it a while, I followed it, and it perched and spent a bunch of time on the Campanile and got me excited that maybe it was thinking about making a home there.
The first person Lynn told was her husband, Sean Peterson, who then was a PhD student at UC Berkeley. Today, Lynn and Sean, both biology professors, have actually moved to a new nest at St. Olaf's College in Minnesota, but they remain active in the Golden Gate Raptor Observatory Group back in California, and they are the creators of the popular Cal Falcons web stream on YouTube. Lynn and Sean say there was no effort in 2016 to keep their find a secret.
We told everyone, of course.
You can't keep them a secret because they're so loud and so kind of obvious. And Berkeley has a lot of people interested in wildlife. So there were actually a bunch of people who independently found the peregrines roughly around the same time.
We're both longtime volunteers with the Golden Gate Raptor Observatory, and they're in the San Francisco Bay Area, and they do all of this research. So, of course, I have a whole network of people to tell about the peregrine falcons.
Lynn and Sean got permission to climb the tower to the very top. Somebody had to make sure that the peregrines were safe and that their nest was positioned in a way that would not be dangerous for baby chicks.
The tower is kind of this iconic and historic structure, and they really control access to it. If you go up the tower, you're allowed in the public to go as far as the bell level, where all the big bells are that play music all the time. That's as high as you can go. You can't get any higher without someone guiding you, unlocking doors, taking you on this crazy twisted spiral staircase up like a column that you can barely fit in. It's a really crazy adventure to get up there.
Yeah, it's a little door hidden in this column at the edge, and I'm a touch claustrophobic, so I had to assure myself this is worth it to see the peregrines.
Up over the belfry, which houses a famous carillon, the Campanile Tower is capped with an elongated pyramid for a spire. At the base of this spire, if you get the right permission, you'll find a narrow swath of horizontal roof space, and this is surrounded by an ornamental stone balustrade. It's in this narrow buffer between the spire and the balustrade, under the open sky, that the peregrines have decided to make a home.
It was amazing, though. We crawl up this column, up this staircase there in this concrete walled building with no windows, except for the top level has these wooden slats covering some of the openings. And I looked through and I could see just these pair of yellow eyes staring right back at me. And so that was the first moment where we were like, there's definitely a nest here because she's sitting right there on the tower, staring at inside of it almost and seeing what's going on.
Inspecting the nest turned out to be a very good idea. The female, whom they named Annie, and Grinnell, her mate, the pair had found a sandbag to use as the base of a nest, and it just was not very stable, so Sean and Lynn had to improvise.
The site actually was exposed to conditions where the eggs were rolling out of the nest. There were several eggs that had rolled out.
We had to do an emergency kind of nest site replacement that first day that we were up there.
How do you go about replacing a nest from underneath a sitting peregrine mother, Annie sitting there staring right back at you? I would imagine you just kind of have to somehow, I don't know, sneak up.
You can't really be sneaky. Like, they know you're there. They can see you coming a mile away or, many miles away if you're approaching. So we had to move her off the nest. But she's a very, very aggressive bird. She was defending. She was flying, coming after us, dive bombing us, trying to drive us away.
Yes, we weren't being sneaky so much as being cautious to make sure we were not exposed to a situation where she could hit us. And when Sean says we moved her off the nest, not physically, our presence caused her to step away and go onto the top of the balcony.
Today, the Campanile peregrine nest is a gravel tray, which gives the peregrines a safer place to raise their chicks. Shortly after the nesting pair was discovered, Annie and her mate, Lynn and Sean installed webcams for a live stream trained on this gravel nest.
Our original intention was to just make it possible to monitor what was going on with the nest so that we would be aware of when eggs hatched. So, the chicks could be found and monitored into the future and know when to be watching out for potential fledging. And then we were like, but we'll make it public. Probably Berkeley locals will be interested in this.
As it turned out, the audience grew to be much bigger than they ever could have imagined. Today, the Cal Falcons YouTube channel has almost 19,000 followers. Sean says they did not set out to create an internet sensation.
Absolutely not. When we were kind of crowdfunding for the cameras, I thought we'd have like 10 people watching max, and it would probably be like me and my family and some other scientists. We were just blown away how many people have decided to enjoy these birds.
The star of the show has been Annie, the matriarch of the family. Annie is a resilient and determined mother.
People always are like, well, we don't want to anthropomorphize these birds, but they are distinct individuals that have different characteristics. So I will, on a personal level, do a touch of anthropomorphizing of them. And so in describing Annie, a lot of people refer to her as Queen Annie. And it's not an inappropriate name. She really is very good at defending that territory. She's very reactive if unknown birds arrive. She's a very strong and large bird, so she is in almost any interaction she's in, the dominant individual. And then you can tell that she's really vetting her potential mates, taking a leading role on a lot of things. Both males and females incubate, but she definitely is doing it when and where on her own terms.
One of the things that I have loved watching about Annie is that she is very insistent in feeding the chicks until they're full to bursting, even when they're like old, like ready to go, teenagers leaving the house kind of things, where she'll like chase them around the tower trying to cram more food into them. And they're like, Mom, I'm full. I don't need any more. But she is insistent that they eat their fill.
Many of Annie's chicks have fledged a little later than what would be expected, and then have ultimately left the territories a little later than what would be expected. And it's because Annie has continued to keep feeding them and keep taking care of them, I think, longer than many other falcons. She's a good provider.
Earlier, I mentioned Grinnell. Grinnell was the first of 4 mates Annie has had. There have been fatalities for varying reasons.
We had a remarkably long period of stability when this nest and pair was formed. Maybe we were lulled into a false sense of security that everything was going to be stable and fine. But frankly, the Campanile, this tower, is an amazingly desirable piece of property. It has great view lines, great food sources around it. It's very easy to protect. So there's a lot of birds that want to take that territory. So over that off season and spring, we had a lot of unrecognized individuals coming in, who we call interlopers.
Over the first several years of human observation, competition for this coveted bit of lofty real estate, this penthouse, was relatively low. But in 2022, everything heated up considerably. And this made the online human fan club for Annie understandably nervous to see the fierceness of it all. Lynn and Sean had a perspective based on something more than just the drama. Increased competition, they knew, was a very positive indicator. It meant that the peregrine population in the overall area was growing and thriving.
What is a threat to a peregrine falcon when they're adults are other peregrine falcons. If the population is low, there's not really any competition between individuals because each one can find their own space and create their own nest and territory. It's when the population recovers and starts to do really well that you start to have this additional amount of kind of competition.
Decades earlier, peregrines, like so many other birds, had been pushed to the brink of extinction. This was mainly because of unregulated spraying of DDT. It's a well-known story and well-understood cause today. But think back to that season of American agricultural history when it was not yet understood that DDT would weaken eggshells. Bird populations were hit hard, and peregrine numbers in particular plummeted. At the lowest point, only 2 known pairs of peregrines were left in the United States west of the Mississippi River. Then, after a ban was instituted on the widespread use of DDT, these peregrine populations began to recover. By 1999, they were taken off the endangered and threatened species list. So now, in a Bay Area neighborhood where housing prices have always been at a premium for humans, peregrines also began to feel the crunch.
What we think happened with Grinnell is we last saw him chasing away a very large female interloper. And just as a very quick background for your listeners, the male peregrine falcon is about 2/3 the size of a female. And so it takes a lot of bravery for a male to defend its territory against a female. I mean, that's a very dangerous thing to do. And it might have been what got Grinnell killed in this instance, because he was chasing this bird and somehow ended up on the ground and was hit by a car. And it was really tragic. You know, this is our first loss at this nest site, and so many people had kind of emotionally attached themselves to these birds that it was really kind of this group mourning that kicked off instantly.
It's a hard thing to kind of communicate about with people. This juvenile female is not a villain in a soap opera. This is another falcon whose life is equally valuable as the falcons we have gotten to know. It's another falcon trying to make her way in the world, and she's just a member of this population that's doing great. It's a bird doing what birds do.
The scientific detachment Lynn manifests here as she speaks is no doubt easier for her with her training than for any of us who are not wildlife experts. When Grinnell died, he and Annie had a clutch of eggs whose survival chances dropped significantly. It was impossible for Annie to incubate the eggs and hunt enough to feed herself during the winter. Without her partner Grinnell there to divide the workload, the pair's eggs were unlikely to hatch later that spring. Then this feathered family's drama took a twist.
And we couldn't take time to fully mourn Grinnell because a new male showed up, and we were in this unprecedented territory of like, what happens when a mate shows into an already existing nest with eggs, and we didn't know. And so this new individual ended up being named Alden, and he took over the nest site and raised the chicks with Annie. And it's very, very likely that the chicks he raised were Grinnell's chicks. They were not his chicks. We know it for certain, at least one was not his, but it is likely that both chicks that year were not his. And I feel like this perception in a lot of people that nature is unforgiving and you only do things to maximize your reproductive fitness. And that's not true. This is a situation where he cared for those chicks and he had no genetic stake in their success. And his care of those chicks was impeccable. He cared for them just the same as we saw other parents care for their chicks. So it's this really cool moment of kind of that stepfather type situation happening in a wild family of birds. And I think was a really amazing moment.
Later that year, Alden disappeared. To this day, Lynn and Sean don't know where he went or what happened to him. Annie's third mate helped raise another clutch of chicks in 2023 before he also disappeared in early 2024. Annie is now partnered with a peregrine named Archie, her fourth partner. During the 2024 season, they successfully raised 4 chicks together. Despite the loss of multiple mates, Annie has been a remarkably successful mother.
Yep, she's been incredibly successful. She's averaged like 3 chicks a year for every year she's bred, and she's only had 2 chicks that we know of that have not made it to independence. So yeah, she's getting kind of up there in age, but she's showing no signs of slowing down. This is the first year that they had 4 chicks ever. And everyone was like, oh no, 4 chicks, like, can she handle it? Can they take care of that many birds? And she did great. So she's still bringing home the pigeon, so to speak, and doing a great job keeping everyone happy and healthy.
So I know you're thrilled with Annie's success, but it has been years now since Annie first arrived on the Berkeley campus and you spotted her. For somebody following a nesting bird for this long, for any animal, I guess, for that matter, does the whole thing eventually start to feel just a little bit, well, kind of routine?
Never. There are so many things in watching these birds that are just like bring out the inner child in me of like just pure wonder and joy in seeing their behavior. You know, I've watched them hunt where I've been on the other side of campus and I see them leave the tower and then split second later, they're over my head and gone. Like that speed is so unbelievable to see in your personal life. You know, walking between classes or something was just astounding. And one of the things that has really given me a tremendous amount of wonder is seeing people experience these birds for the first time in a completely unexpected way. They are basically, you know, going around their day, walking around campus. Everything is kind of has this rhythm. And then all of a sudden, the natural world just explodes in and interrupts everything and gives them this moment of, you are not alone in the world. The world is right here with you, a part of everything that is around you. And to see that kind of change their entire perspective on what they're thinking about that day is just so exciting. Especially in kids is wonderful too, where you have families coming and visiting campus and maybe, you know, some prospective undergrad's 10-year-old brother is running around and then they see the falcons and that moment of wonder of, it's the fastest animal in the world right there above my head. That's so fun to see.
Our guests today have been George Smith, Lynn Schofield, and Sean Peterson. Lynn and Sean are both visiting biology professors at St. Olaf's College in Minnesota and ornithologists with the Cal Falcons group. George Smith is the peregrine coordinator for the Scottish Raptor Study Group. Today's episode was produced by Eric Schultzke and Mamie Teeples, with sound design by James Call, Gabe Vargas, and Josh Fouts. I'm Marcus Smith. Constant Wonder is a production of BYU Radio. I want to take a moment and recommend another show from the BYU Radio family of podcasts, The Lisa Show. With life's great onslaught, everything that can overwhelm us and add stress to our life, Lisa Valentine Clark, her guests, and Council of Moms provide a practical, positive outlook on our ongoing daily challenges. They tackle problems head-on with wisdom and experience. You'll hear suggestions for better handling interpersonal relationships, useful ideas related to health, technology, body image, family, and a host of other important issues. It's called The Lisa Show, and of course, it's available wherever you get your podcasts.